From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peggy Pearlstein, head of the Hebraic section here at the Library of Congress. Welcome to today's program, where we will hear about the life story of Mr. Tewodros Fekadu, whom we've met before and who's done work here at the Library of Congress previously. So I'm happy that you're all here at today's program, and I'm going to ask our specialist for Ethiopic materials, Mr. Fentun Turuna, to introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Peggy. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have a special guest from Australia who will be telling us a fascinating story about himself. But before that, I have a couple of announcements to make. The first announcement is that there will be coffee served in the divisional conference room right behind me. The second is an administrative announcement that this event is being videotaped for subsequent broadcast on the library's webcast and other media. There will be a formal question and answer period after the lecture in which the audience is encouraged to ask questions and offer comments. But please be advised that your voice and image may be recorded and later broadcast as part of the event. By participating in the question and answer period, you are consenting to the library's possible reproduction and transmission of your remarks. I also want to announce that Mr. Tewodros' book will be on sale right after this presentation. After the question and answer period, Mr. Tewodros will be happy to autograph his book. Those of you who join us for coffee will get more chance to talk with him, with the author in the conference room. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Lemlem, owner of the coffee shop in the Madison building of the Library of Congress, and she has now become owner of the current restaurant in DC. And Ms. Abeba, who is with us, for their generosity to present coffee and goodies for this occasion out of kind heart. Mr. Tewodros Fekadu was born in 1971 in Asmara, Eritrea. His mother took him to Shire, Tigray, just across the border from Eritrea, when he was 3 years old. The story that unfolds thereafter in his life is better left for him to narrate. It's a riveting personal account that has touched the hearts of men and women around the globe. When Mr. Tewodros came to me 1 year ago to introduce his well-written book, I had no second thought but to invite him to give a talk here. His acceptance meant a lot to me, as I was glad to provide a forum to address a common cultural and social problem that has affected the lives of thousands of women and children in Ethiopia and Eritrea. Here is Tewodros, brave enough to write and discuss about his childhood anguish that developed to his later life. Hopefully, Tewodros' book and his presentation will inspire several Eritreans and Ethiopians to write their story. Tewodros now lives in Australia, married to his beautiful wife, Anita. Tewodros calls her his guardian angel. He gives her credit for all his successes in his life. True to her name, Anita is traveling with Tewodros currently to support his efforts to promote his book. And not only that, but supports him in all his philanthropic engagements within Ethiopia and among the diaspora African community in Australia that he will be talking about. We are indeed honored to have her in our midst. Now, please join me in welcoming Tewodros Fekadu.
Thank you, Fantone. We're very proud of Fantone. Yeah. Yes. We're very proud of Fantown because he look after the Eritrean and Ethiopian. As you know, these two countries are in trouble, but we try to bring through the media or through the written to make it unity and also peace. Thank you, Fantown. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to be here with you today at the Library of the Congress, the Hebraic Section, Africa and Middle Eastern Division, to share my story of survival with you. My name is Tewodros Fekadu, and I'm the author of No One's Son, the story of my life. I now live in Australia, the land down under, as the people often say. No One's Son originally published there in 2009 and was picked up by publisher here in the US and released 2 weeks ago. I'm very excited to be here with you today. The first book was this. As you see, it's full my picture. And the second one was here. I think they did great design, and I'm very proud of the designer. Before I talk further, I would like to show you a short 5-minute slideshow video overview of my life, and then I will be explain about the book and also my experience. So if you can be patient, that would be good. So as you see, life was tough, but I'm standing tall in front of you. And it's a miracle for me to be here in this amazing library and with beautiful people. So in the 70s, my mother was living with her grandmother, and she was going to school. She was, at the time, 7th grade. Where she was going to school, my father was a health officer, and of course he used to see her. She was beautiful, she had long hair, and he then thought he wanted this woman. I don't have evidence, but I've asked what happened at the time when he met her. But what I found is there was no relationship at the time with my mother. He just saw her, and he forced her, and I was the child. And she became pregnant, and she was very ashamed at the time. And she has to leave the country. She was living in northern Ethiopia, in Tigray, and she just went to Eritrea, which is the capital of city Asmara, and I was born in Asmara in 1971. Then what I know, there was a civil war between Ethiopia and Eritrea at the time. And there was also students' movement, I guess, during the Fantown time. And again, of course, Eritrea went to become independent from Ethiopia, and Haile Selassie was in trouble. And after Haile Selassie was overthrown, life became again very tough and hard in Asmara. Then my mother, she had to go to country where she was born, and she had to travel by walk for almost 10 days and arrive again in northern Ethiopia, in Tigray. Then life was just terrible, and living from relative's house to another relative's house, from family to family, begging people, until I was 9 years old. So no school, no childhood memory. All I remember was the war. Then a relative advised her, you should send this boy to his father. At the time, my father was a wealthy doctor, and he was living in a capital of Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. And he was a teacher at it's called a Black Lion Hospital. And he had his own wife, and he's got family, other children. Then she didn't have any option. She sent me back of the truck from Tigray to Asmara. And then from Asmara, I went to my father's. And he immediately denied that I was his son. and he was ashamed. And of course, I was born out of wedlock. But his wife, somehow, my stepmother, was a good woman. She just insisted in asking him, we should keep him. So I was for almost 2 weeks with my father, and I was excited to see his children, and he was living in a big villa house. But I didn't know he organized to the orphanage to send me to the Catholic Church. And within 2 weeks after I arrived in Addis Ababa, he sent me away to the orphanage. And in a way, it was good for me. That's where I went to school and had a good meal and good sleep. But what happened later on, the priests change every 2-3 years, and they found out, one of the priests, actually, I have a wealthy doctor, I shouldn't be at the orphanage, because the orphanage belonged to the children who doesn't have family and mother and father. So they said, you have to leave the church. So I left the church. I didn't know where to go. I don't know where my mother, she is. I was, at the time, 11 years old. So I ended up on the street of Addis Ababa, when there is no any help. Unlike America or Australia, the government, there's no any support with organization, non-profit organization. So life was tough. So the unique things on the top of this, which I didn't know, I was half Eritrean and half Ethiopian. And I had a name. They used to call me Dikala, which is the half caste, which is I'm half Eritrean and half Ethiopian. So I had so many names, and which, as I grew, I tried to understand. Then, during the street kids' life, there was this war. During the Derg, sometimes you could be picked up from the street and go to war. But there was only one place that I used to go, the church that I know. I used to go to this church and beg the priest for food. But again, our church, especially the Catholic Church in Ethiopia, is protected by the guard. There is 2-3 guards, so you can't even have a chance to meet a priest that you want. And if you're poor, nobody wants you. And you also actually be beaten for coming to the church, knocking or begging to go to school or to have food. So what kept me going? I guess the church. There was nuns at the church. There were priests who comes from Italy, who used to give us the hope. And I used to see these books, the books we see today here. And I had a dream. And again, born in Asmara, Ethiopia, Eritrea was colonized by Italian. And the city was beautiful. And the people drive good car. And I thought, I have to have this. So for me, it was just looking. It was just dreaming. But it wasn't mine. But then I thought, I have to study hard, and I have to work, and I don't want to die. There was this time when I was a street kid. As I said, I used to go to this church, and I see, especially Saturday morning or Sunday morning, children play around the soccer at the ground in the church. And I was really hungry this day, and I asked these kids. I just told him, I want to talk Father Tewodros, and he said, oh, Father Tewodros, he's not here. He's in another church, which is in Piazza, up the hill. What do you want? And he saw me. I was I was holding my stomach. And he said, "Are you all right?" "Yes, I'm all right, but I really want to see this priest." This priest, I used to see him when I was at the orphanage. And I heard he was in Addis Ababa. So I thought somehow he can help me. And he said, "Well, you know, I'm playing soccer, but I can help you. It's just a kid." So I'm going to read for you that section. It's chapter 11. "There has been no food for days, no shelter, no money, nothing but the clothes on my back. My roar fell to a whimper as I wandered the streets, delirious and dry reaching. The last crumbling edge of my dignity were thinned to a shadow, and I was falling into a short terminal future, starless and unlimited. One last shuffle to the church. It takes me hours. A small boy walks beside me, offering his hand or balance. Is he the ghost of my past, visiting his own end? Has he come to put me to rest? I pause, almost passing out. He points to show how close we were to the door of salvation. As we reached the steps, my tiny angel ran back down the street. Are the devil chasing him too? Stay defined. I want to cry out, but there is no breath left. I stumble inside and listen to the full silence that only a church can hold. There is no song left in life. Time doesn't matter. I don't matter. Nothing matters anymore. Then we arrived at the church, and again, the kid, I remember, he said, "Well, I have to go to play the soccer." And he left me. Then after that was history. Somehow, later, I found my mother. She was living in a country life, in the countryside, and with another husband, and another with 4 children, and no water, no tap water, no electricity. Again, life was tough. But I thought, it doesn't matter. I found my mother. I have to live with her. But the first question I asked my mother, "Why did you send me away to my father? If you were my mother, you should keep me." At that time, I remember my brother Haptam, he's here today, he was born. And I said, "I am your child. You shouldn't really send me away." Then she said, "My son, your father was wealthy. I thought he could send you to the school and educate you. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and I'm sorry." So then I went to school. I started living with her, but there was no future in that country. And again, I'm a big dreamer. I want to move on. So during the school holiday, I often go to the capital city, Addis Ababa, and met a priest who is in my book, Father Roberto. I explain everything for him. All I need is just a job. Anything I will do. At the time, if you have a driving license, somehow you can survive. So for me, just I want anything. So he helped me with driving license. And I found a job. My first job was to work at the video shop store. So life started to change. But unfortunately, the country hasn't changed. The war still was going on between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And soon later, the junta won, and another government, new government came. And again, another war happened between Ethiopia and Eritrea because of the border conflict. So people start to panic, and the Eritrean who lived for so many years in Ethiopia start to be deported to their country, to Eritrea. Again, Eritrean government also start deporting the Ethiopian to Ethiopia. So who am I? So I said, I'm a grown man. I have to go out of this country. There was no life for me here. So somehow again, via Egypt, I end up in Japan. And I immediately applied for United Nations and Australian government as a refugee. But I was told that the refugee process application, will take some time, so I have to wait. But life was very expensive in Japan. How could you survive? No family, no friend. You have to work hard to live in Japan. So that was the only option, and I went ahead and found a job, and I started working at the company. Unfortunately, within 2 weeks, the immigration officer came, and I was arrested, and I ended up in detention center. So the detention was, for me, as a new person, it was like a cage, the Japanese detention center. I thought, the Japanese and the Ethiopian had, good connection and the culture, and I thought they will respect the human rights because Japan signed in 1951 to United Nations that will also accept refugee and basically obey the human right. But that wasn't the case in the detention center. So we were in one room, about 11 people. We sleep on the floor. They call it the tatami. In that room, there was a small toilet and a sink, and no library, no exercise. Maybe if we are lucky, if the weather is good, once a week for half an hour, we go outside just to see the sun. And then we have to return the room and locked. And I was in that detention center in total for 3 years and 3 months. And we were asking protection. We were not criminal, but we were included with the criminal. There was a lot of Asian who comes by boat from China, from Thailand, from Indonesia, who did a lot of crime and sent to prison. Once they finish their prison, they bring them to our detention center. So we were included in that detention center. And a lot of people smoke in that detention center. And after 2 years, I start to get sick, especially with my right ear. I start getting pain, and I asked to get help, and I didn't get any help. There was one doctor in the detention center, which is just, he look at you and give you a temporary medicine. There was no special doctor, or there was no any exam that you can get in that doctor. So because basically their job, the immigration job is to deport people. So whether you said, I'm a refugee, I'm here, and I'm not going back home, there is a war. So they will say, kankenai, which means, I don't know, I don't care. They just do what they've been told from the boss. So after 2-3 weeks after the pain started, I kept going, and I keep asking for help. And the process was taking long. So I thought, what I have to do? Maybe I have to do something. Maybe I have to do hunger strike to show them that I'm willing to die. So I did, and I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to read that part. It was mid-October when I stopped eating. I decided from the outset that I would not consume any liquid, including water, to hasten the effect. The first strike day went by. I watched the other eating their meal free of envy. On the second day, I felt slightly weaker and had to reassure myself that I was doing the right thing. By day 3, I had lost considerable strength. My empty belly seemed to amplify the pain in my ear. I spent much of this day curled in fetal position, trying to block out the pain that was everywhere. I was hanging on them merely by primal instinct and vaguely remember snapping like a wounded animal at anyone who ventured near. My cellmates requested for help were repeatedly ignored. The guard assumed that it wouldn't be long before my stomach would win out over my head and I would eat soon. But if only they knew that Defiance was my middle name. Then I continue up until 6 days. At the end, they have no choice. They have to take me to another, we call it single room, where you watched in front of the guard. And without my permission, of course, they gave me the glucose, and I was recovered after 6 days. But I was willing to die. But what was interesting, later on, I found even if you die, they don't care. There was a Vietnamese refugee next to my door. He cut himself and died one time. And the police came, it was covered the room, and then it was forgotten. Because there was no media, they're very secretive. Nobody knows anything about Japan. I guess they have money. They give a lot of money to United Nations, and they have the power. Then I was also, after recovery, I was contacting Amnesty International and the Catholic Church, and through this supporter, I was released as a temporary. Then I had a volunteer lawyer. They decided to go to court for losing my hearing and also for the refugee status to be accepted. But again, that will take years and years. And I couldn't win about the losing my hearing because no Japanese doctor can come and satisfy to say this is wrong, because they all are again protected their country. So it was very hard to find someone who can stand up and say this is wrong. That's what I love about America. So that didn't happen. The process was going on for almost 5 years, going to court, preparing. It was like a soccer game. You know, you kick the ball and they kick the ball. We give a lot of documents to convince the judge, and then the immigration lawyer give another papers. But there was this angel, my wife Anita came along, and I have to drop everything and go to Australia. After I arrived in Australia, I thought this is it. Life is going to change. And dream come true. So now I have my own company. It's called Moonface Entertainment. make documentaries and film. And also I found the African Community Association, which we help with refugee on arrival in Australia. And again, my wife and I, with some groups, we are building clinics. It's called Tewodros in Ethiopia. And also, we fundraise for a lot of organizations, if you know, like Fistula Hospital in Ethiopia, and also Retrack, who helps street kids. So, life is good, but life was hard. But if you love life and if you think positive, there's nothing impossible. It doesn't matter how much you can be hurt, but they can't take your heart. So they didn't take my heart. I was suffered mentally and physically. And I knew one day I will be stand tall in front of you. And thank you. I'm just going to read one, it's just an overview, again, introduction to my book, and then we will finish the presentation. As I'm writing the book, actually I also become interested in the history of Ethiopia, Eritrea. So it's amazing history we have. And I also did amazing research for almost 10 years. It took me 10 years, this book, about my father and about my mother. So I'll be able to bring this to history about my father and including Ethiopian history. And I was in love with Africa. But I found that when I mention Africa, people of the Western world tend to think a homogeneous land, people and culture that are distant from their own in so many ways. Typically coming to fore are iconic image of drum, famine, travel, politics, or the lion of the Serengeti plains. The heart of Africa is so much more. The many nations that make up its core and history have their own diverse heritage, which was thriving and dominant long before the continent became the treasure that colonial empire desired. My Africa is Ethiopia. This land has gained renown as the birthplace of human race. Elevated on the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia claims a noble lineage going all the way back to the Queen Sheba and King Solomon. The smaller nations on every side have frequently aspired to partake of its greatnesses, and in their turn, superpower undermined its stability to serve their own remote needs. I entered a difficult world where nobility, pride, and beliefs were thrown to chaos. The need for family became the only safe haven. Yet this too could mean doom for those who were singled out by the terror of war. Denied a sense of family, I struggle like a lion in the wilderness. I come from the street, from war, from rejection, from violence and betrayal. I sought freedom abroad in Egypt and Japan, only to be imprisoned by bureaucracy. In practical sense, the triumph of surviving all is in going to Australia. The real triumph is not becoming bitter or corrupt, but to emerge still in love with life. In retelling the challenges and victory of my journey, I wish to honor my mother's despair and seek understanding of my father's pride. I have been the voice of change for those whose humanity has been crushed. I rejoice in celebrating my culture. I emphasize with all who have suffered loss wherever they may be. The need to belong, the need to survive, The need to be free all drove me beyond hardship to seek the life of my dreams. Yet it's my Africa heart, this heart of lion, that brought me to the true freedom of love. As you walk with me through the page of my journey to freedom, I invite you to discover your own dreams. Embrace them, seek them, live them. In knowing ourselves, we can truly give to others. In giving to others, we make the world a better place. Thank you very much. I guess if you have time, we can have questions. Yes.
Thank you for the lecture. Could you say a few words about the music accompanying your video?
About the music?
The music in the video.
The music, actually, it was an African singer, so I didn't make it.
What was his style?
Well, it's an African. We have over many languages, so I don't know about the language. It's just a sing. I thought that I could use with my slideshow, but I don't know what he's singing. So it's not an Ethiopian song. It's just an African song. But a lot of people ask me about this, so I have to find someone who can translate this song. Yes.
No, I just wanted to ask you in terms of the story, where did you meet your wife? Was it in Japan and then you went to Australia or? Oh, okay.
It's okay. No problem. No, we met in Japan. Then, of course, it wasn't easy. She was Australian, young, and I was just a refugee. I didn't tell her who I was. I thought, it was very difficult to tell all this story, and how can she believe me? And but she was amazing. She was different. But at one stage, she thought I was a terrorist. So we had a hard time, but we were in love. And when you love, nothing can stop you. So we made it to these days. I don't know about the future.
How many languages do you speak? How many languages do you speak? And the second question, is your mother still alive?
That's a good question. I speak 5 languages, which is Tigrinya, Eritrean language, and Amharic is Ethiopian language, and Arabic, Egyptian language, and Japanese and English. And my mother, I'm reconnected with my mother, and I now have a family. I have a stepbrother here, Haptam, with me. Haptam, can you stand? He was a little boy. It's okay, you are my brother. And my wife, Anita, she's over there. And we reconnect with my mother, and we actually brought her to Australia, and because she was always want to go overseas and study. And after, actually, my father passed away a few years ago, before he read the book. I have big regret. I thought, I would lose my mother. I don't want to regret. In our culture, we respect family. Family is part of our culture, everything. And I thought I have to work hard to bring my mother and show her who I am, where I am, and give her anything she wants. So we brought her to Australia. She had a good time, and I just actually visited her last month and came to America. So it seems everything's good. Any question? Yes?
Congratulations. It's an excellent story.
Thank you.
Very touching. What I really like about your story, that every time it is hardship, as you said, you never really give up. You always said that someday, when you said you're going to stand up there and be in a situation like this. That's very, very tense. I wonder, because you have really suffered a lot, what is your view about forgiveness? Have you really forgiven, all those people that have just been harmed to you, hardship that you have been through? I think I know the answer.
It's a good question. To be honest, I wouldn't lie in front of this amazing library. Forgiveness is hard. But what we have to do is we have to move on. We have to still remember what happened. And, yes, we can forgive, but we are human again. We struggle with that. So we have to be honest. I have the anger toward my father, and I have anger toward some people. But then, you just show them the success, I guess, and you move on. I guess, we have to also love these people, otherwise, because we have no choice. And if you don't love, if you don't try to forgive, then you're the one you're going to suffer. So we have no choice, even though it's, we're telling we forgive them, even though we can't forgive them. But we have to say to ourselves, yes, I love you and I forgive you. Even it still will keep coming, will still disturb you. But we have to think also, life is short. Why do we have to hate hatred and fight each other? We just move on. The world is big. I always say to people, travel, go out there. And I just want to be an international citizen, just not Australian citizen only. So I guess to your question, it's hard to forgive people, but it's good to move on and to love them and to enjoy life and celebrate our life while we're here. Thank you. Any other question? Yes.
You want to say something about how you became a filmmaker and what kind of films you did?
Yes. As I mentioned, my first job was at the video shop store. After Father Roberto helped me to get the driving license, and then I was hired at the video shop. And then I start to see this American film, and again, that also will give you to dream. You see the Hollywood film with a nice house, a nice car, and if people can live like this, they are human like me, so I have to make it. So I thought, one day I will be filmmaker. I always wanted to be a producer, and because I was also keeping writing, I used to love writing, in a way to help me healing. That was my only hope when I was a child. So then when you write, you see the film, you become attached with that. But I didn't have any chance to study until I went to Australia. And then I went to college, study film and photographic. Then I was working with some companies, but then I thought, I have, amazing culture. I need to build that culture with Australia, to be a bridges between Africa and Australia. Then I started my own film company. It's called Moonface Entertainment. Mainly I work with documentary, about street kids, about families, so those kind of things. So, but again, this book is keeping me busy, so I hope I can move on. Any other question? Okay, yes.
What kind of Ethiopian community is there in Australia? You mentioned that there was such a community.
Yes, we have Ethiopian and also Eritrean and Sudan and Somalia. Those people, unlike America, there's no DV like the lotto. Like my brother came with the DV lotto here to America. We don't have such things in Australia, except maybe if you're married, you can come to Australia, or if you are a refugee. As a refugee, a lot of them comes from Nairobi, from Sudan, from Egypt. So we have refugees from Sudan, Eritrean, Ethiopian. We're not a lot of people. We're not like America, like especially in DC. So we support these refugees when they arrive in Australia. We help them with, taking them to the shopping and taking them to hospital, to schools, because there's not a lot of organization that help these refugees, unlike America. And there's not many people like America to help you there. So we make sure these people settle properly in Australia. Thank you.
I guess we have, okay, one more question.
You mentioned that you got interested in Ethiopian history through searching about your mother's biography and things like that. So I assume that you have an idea about the situation. I saw the map of Ethiopia.
Eritrea, yeah.
Where we see that Ethiopia is big country,
Yes.
but has no access to the sea. There's no access to the sea because they are divided now. Ethiopia and Eritrea are now two countries.
They are separated.
Yeah. What do you think about the future of this situation? Do you think that there is a solution?
Sorry, exactly your question was.
Yeah. Once Ethiopia and Eritrea were one country,
Yes,
now there are two countries.
yes,
It brings a lot of trouble.
yes.
Wars just come and go away, but I like to come back.
Yes.
So what do you think about
We need a good leader. We need a good leader, and we need to. I guess we need to educate our children to be a good leader, so then we can solve this problem. It's a big problem. I guess we give it to to people who are in govern, and I hope God help America, Africa, everywhere. Thank you very much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.